This apocalypse gonna be on the Magi. It's about Latinos, Mexicans, and blacks coming together, but it's about diffusing the racial game that's been played on both sides.
All right, peace and blessings to everybody that's out there that's listening. Basically, you know, as far as the question, as far as when it comes to racism and dealing with, you know, the different races, the main thing what majority of people have to understand is that when you look at races, you have to look at who actually started to classify us as races. When you look at as far as let's say the text, when you go into, you know, the kingdoms of what they call, you know, ancient Egypt, which is not the actual true name of that land.
Right.
You know, it's the English equivalent would be, you know, the land they called it the land of papyrus, as far as for like the lower Egypt part, and the upper Egypt was a different name. But just to look at, when you look at those pyramid texts, they had different shades of individuals that they had, you know, depicted, but that was later on translated as them seeing people as divisions of people. But you see, when they had those as a text, they were actually showing different shades of individuals, but those people were actually walking into, as far as to paradise. And so, you know, their example of it was actually everyone that they saw at the time was at one, but that was at that time. And eventually they saw exactly in their kingdom, as far as, you know, what happened when multiple people started to come into that area. And of course, like any great kingdom, has always fell. Now us in the modern times,
right,
what the problem is that we don't take time to actually study other cultures.
No.
And we see, you know, other cultures just as, you know, the people that we see now. All of us right now, we all, no matter, you know, how you see yourself, we descend as far as from great tribes. Just like as far as for us, we were called black people. But what do we call ourselves? It's just like as far as when you go to the let's say for instance, you know, this land right here where we're at in North Carolina, the so-called whites, the so-called Spanish, the so-called, you know, blacks, whatever, they're not the original inhabitants of this land. In this area, the tribe, they call them the Cherokee tribe. But even that Cherokee tribe, they didn't refer to themselves as Cherokee.
Right.
They referred to themselves as Jalaji. That's what they called themselves. And it's just like as far as for like, let's say like the tribes, you know, in New York, they were known as the keepers of the fire. I'm sorry, the keepers of the Eastern Gate. And then you had tribes in the central part of the United States. It would translate as the keepers of the fire. You got so many different tribes, and see, that's what we all descend from.
Yeah.
We descend as far as, you know, from tribes. And, you know, see, me, I study scripture, and I believe it's been, you know, given a false interpretation to us. And I believe, like how it says in the Final Call newspaper, it needs to be reinterpreted. But it talks about the 144,000, you know, and it says there's 12 different tribes.
Wow.
Of the houses of Israel. See, we all, it's just like, you know, myself and this brother right here, most people would consider us as, you know, black. But see, but we got different makeup that's in us.
Right.
But what tribe, you know, are we from? It's all about, you know, learning and coming to, you know, a higher understanding, because, you know, in the 80s and 90s, some of it's changed now, but in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, majority everybody was trying to be white. The lighter that you were, the better off you were. No matter if you're Chinese, Japanese, Jamaican, Haitian,
True that.
South America, wherever you at, it was a light skin, dark skin complex, and it goes from the Willie Lynch syndrome.
That's right.
And that's one of the keys right there. If you study, you know, that Willie Lynch letter that was delivered at the Jamestown River, because see that affected everybody.
It did.
And you know, when you had the
worldwide
the transatlantic slave trade, see, that affected everybody. And see, everybody, even, you know, most people think, you know, slave trade, they just, you know, think about, you know, really just Britons and really just the British and the white people like that. But see, it's everybody. When it comes to the motherland and, you know, that whole region, you got Arabs, you got our own people that played a role in that.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, some of the most successful slave traders, they said that they had to have, in order for it to be successful, they had to have key players in Africa who were willing to go along with what they wanted to do. Well, all this nonsense is going on as far as for racism and all that, there's people who feed into it and they play on it.
Big time.
There's people that sit behind closed doors and they put, you know, racism against one of the Puerto Rican, against the Cuban, you know, against the Dominican Republic. See, that's what, see,
all of you are brothers.
All these different countries, see, it's all been put as division. And see, that's what, in order to eliminate that, we have to actually understand
the Middle East and stuff,
exactly.
Man, like that.
We got to exactly understand, you know, this area where we're at, because see, we got North and South Carolina, and that's why, you know, we're here as far as, you know, in Charlotte. When you look at the news, you know, they gonna tell you about what goes on in South Carolina also, because it's so close. But they don't do that as far as, you know, with Virginia, because it's a different area. So what we got to do as far as, you know, with people is that we got to, you know, cater to everybody. And that's why, you know, one of the most successful shows of all time, one of the best shows of all time, in my opinion, was In Living Color. And the reason why I say that is because you had the funniest of
every race,
exactly,
every nationality.
And it brought everybody as far as, you know, watching at one particular time.
That's right.
And that's why it said In Living Color. So I mean, you know, we can go by, you know, these colors, but the main way to get rid of it is that us as black, I know all them, you know, pro-black and conscious, you know, people out there, really you're gonna have to actually come up out of that
and settle your differences and work and
the reason why is because you got people that are in India and all over the world that are blacker than you, but they're not called black.
And they don't like the name called black.
They're what their native tribe is. What y'all need to do, instead of saying, you know, black and stuff like that, you need to understand, find a different term. Like, for instance, the Spanish, they called the escaped slaves, they called them maroons. And see, most people think that just the maroons, that's just a Jamaican term or a Caribbean term. But no, the Spanish, when they had enslaved individuals, when they were runaway slaves, they called them maroons.
Wow.
But see, the British were so arrogant. See, they didn't share, you know, their religion as far as, you know, with blacks. And so, you know, they ended up, as far as, you know, rebelling. And then they ended up, you know, going up into the hills. Then they started, you know, practicing, you know, what they call, you know, they say black magic and stuff like that. We got to start tracing, you know, the origins of all this.
And titles.
But hopefully we continue.
We're gonna continue on part 2, and we're gonna end this segment. Peace.
Peace.